Is it my imagination, or does it feel like it's been Kate's birthday for like 2 weeks straight? Because what Kate really needed more than anything was more than one day a year that's supposed to be all about her. Am I right? Hit the intro and let's get this over with. Oh, God. Why did you do this, Batwoman? You were this close to delivering your least bad episode. The identity politics were downplayed, nobody was acting like an idiot, everything was going kind of okay for a change, and I was almost rooting for you to pull this off. But then you reverted to form and everything fell apart like it always does. For crying out loud, you had about a third of an episode here that was uncharacteristically competent. But it's as if the writers, almost by accident, because that's probably the only way it could ever happen on this show, Forrest Gumped their way into churning out a passable script for once, only for the showrunner to get a hold of it and be like, whoa, what the hell is this? Where's all the identity politics? Get your asses back in there and make this script woke as hell! So then they did a quick rewrite or something, and that's how we got episode 11, an unbirthday present. An episode that briefly toys with the idea of not sucking, but then does. So we pick up right where the last episode left off. Kate finds Beth waiting for her in her office, which is actually Bruce's office that Kate just kind of stole. Kate thinks this is Alice and immediately tries to strangle her to death. You know, because Kate cares so much about justice. But Beth pepper sprays her in the face and runs away. And funny thing about this, Kate actually sells the pain of the pepper spray in her eyes more than the truck she gets hit by later. Because the pepper spray was wielded by a woman, of course. That's really the only explanation. Okay, nothing that objectionable yet, but the acting pretty much ruins this scene. Ruby Rose is terrible. Absolutely terrible. I don't think she could emote if you put a gun to her head. And in a scene like this, where emoting is kind of necessary to sell what's going on, that does not do her any favors. Cut to Alice in the Crow's interrogation room, and she's flashing back to the time when Mouse's dad had her locked in the basement. Because it's her birthday, Mouse gives her a stray kitten that he found in the yard, and he gives her a piece of pie with a candle, but then the dad comes in and tells her to make a wish, and she says she wishes to see her family, but he reminds her that if you say the wish out loud, it'll never come true. You know, bringing this guy back is not helping this episode's case at all. I really don't know what they're going for with him. I keep waiting for some kind of explanation for why this character is the way he is, why he seems so cartoonishly at odds with reality, and I just don't think we're gonna get one. Sophie talks to Jacob on the phone, and he tells her to not even bother interrogating Alice. Don't let her into your head, because Beth is dead and there's no reaching her. Just lock her up in Arkham and throw away the key. So of course it's gonna be up to the LGBT POC to get through to Alice, while the straight white guy thinks the traumatized mentally ill person is a lost cause, even when said traumatized mentally ill person is his own daughter. On this show, we should have expected nothing less. Question: why is Jacob still in prison? I refuse to believe that this whole framing him for murder thing is in any way legit when there is tons of evidence that proves his innocence. What about the motel that he stayed in out of town while Mouse was impersonating him? What about the phone message he left saying he was out of town while Mouse was impersonating him? What about Mouse's fingerprints, which would be all over Crow's headquarters while he was impersonating him? I mean, if there isn't enough evidence to get the murder charges dismissed, then he's at least got a hell of a strong case to prove his innocence in court, so I have no idea why they're persisting with this, except that they have to punish Jacob for being a straight white male. A far worse crime than murder, as it turns out. So Kate marches in, all pissed off, not showing the effects of being maced in the face at all, doesn't have red eyes or anything, and she wants to know how Alice got out. But Alice is still locked up. So Kate tells Sophie about Beth, and Sophie says that Mary saw her too, so obviously there's something screwy going on here. So Luke starts doing smart guy stuff, because... well, let's be honest, that's really the only use the show has for him. He runs Beth's fingerprints and they're a perfect match. They also have Beth's phone, which Kate just happens to know the password to, and on the phone is... That photo. The one of Kate and Beth from the evil Bruce Wayne universe in the Crisis crossover. You know, the Bruce Wayne that Kate killed. I only bring that up because the show has not even mentioned that incident since then. So any psychological ramifications that killing her cousin might have on Kate will probably have to be explored by fanfic writers, because the actual writers of the show don't seem remotely interested in doing so. Most likely because it doesn't somehow involve being gay. And on this show, that's about the worst mistake you can make. Batwoman. The show where it's not okay to be gay, it's a requirement. So Kate thinks this may be due to shenanigans that happened during Crisis on Infinite Earths, and this version of Beth may have been spared all the Alice nonsense, so it's kind of a big deal that she's here. And because the writers really want you to remember that this is Kate's birthday, she goes to the place that her and Beth would always go to on their birthday, and she finds Beth in the park. Beth is confused that no one seems to know who she is, which is very strange because she's an exact duplicate of the most famous criminal in the city, just with a different hairstyle. But Kate is happy because her birthday wish came true and she hugs Beth. And this is probably the closest we get to Kate ever actually acting like a human being on this show, so my advice is to savor this moment, because we all know it won't last long. Cut to Sophie trying to talk to Alice. Alice wants her copy of Alice in Wonderland back, but Sophie's not going to play ball unless Alice admits to framing Jacob for murder, which isn't going to happen. Alice is a little put out about the lack of a birthday party, but that's okay, because a party is already being planned. And then we see a video message from Mouse, who has kidnapped the son of the police commissioner and the son of the mayor, and will kill them if Alice is not released by 9 p.m. Cut to Kate's gay bar that she's building despite the evil homophobic restaurant owner across the street, where Kate has very quickly explained the whole multiverse fusing into one universe thing to Beth, and not only does Beth just accept this at face value, no questions asked, she's shockingly chill about the whole thing. Oh, so I'm on a new world that's kind of like my world, but not really, and my world doesn't exist anymore because all the old universes merged into one new universe? Whatever. Hey, what kind of beer do you have back there? I'm not even being hyperbolic about this. It really is dismissed that quickly. They talk about how they still feel like the best of friends, and turns out on Beth's world, Kate actually pulled her out of the car before it fell off the bridge, and ever since then, Kate has been her hero. And yeah, that's hardly surprising. Kate could push a little kid in a wheelchair off a cliff and she'd still have every character on this show kissing her ass. Then we see a news broadcast where some reporter lady mentions that the police have not yet turned on the bat signal, and she asks the police commissioner, the father of one of the kidnapped boys, mind you, if he is refusing to shine the bat signal in the sky because Batwoman is a lesbian. Up until now, this episode had been fine for the most part. Minus Mouse's cartoonishly evil dad who... just get that guy off my damn screen already. I hadn't been really annoyed by anything that happened. It was a mostly inoffensive, harmless, passable episode so far. They were just focusing on characters and drama and story, and it was alright. But suddenly, from out of nowhere, it's like a switch flips, and just like that, it all falls apart again faster than you can say, this show. First of all, maybe the police aren't shining the bat signal because it's not the job of a vigilante to find kidnapped children, it's the job of the police. Second, why the hell are you accusing the father of a kidnapped boy of being prejudiced towards an LGBT crime fighter? Why would you even ask something like that right now? Third, are these writers seriously painting the Gotham Police Commissioner as a man who is so bafflingly intolerant that he's more concerned with Batwoman being an out and proud lesbian than he is with getting his own son back alive? God help me, I wish I could tell you no, but yes, they are really about to go there. The Commissioner avoids answering the question. His only response is, and I quote, "Let's not get distracted by politics." And given the excruciating political turn this episode just took, I really have to wonder who the hell that line was aimed at. So for lack of any better options right now, Sophie runs every test she can think of on Alice's book to determine if it's safe, remember this for later, and then gives it back to her. We then flash back to Beth watching as Mouse's dad works on the proto-ass mask technology, but he can't seem to make it work. Again, I have to ask, is there a reason why he can't just take Mouse to a freaking doctor? Mouse's disfigurement is really no different to that of a burn victim. Doctors have skin grafts and plastic surgery to fix this sort of problem, and they've given us zero explanation for why that is not an option. That's why I can't stand this character. Because he's not a character. He's just a vehicle to facilitate the plot, but the plot makes no damn sense. It's like the writers want Beth to be driven so insane that she turns into Alice, but they couldn't think of a way to do that organically, so they just invented some cartoony lunatic who puts her through all this idiocy because he's just crazy, and that's what the plot needs to happen. I'd accuse them of writing this show for 5-year-olds, but frankly, I think most 5-year-olds are more sophisticated than this. Back in the present, Sophie is trying to understand Alice, and Alice thinks that Sophie knows what it feels like to be trapped your whole life, to have your freedom ripped away, and how unbearable it is to be in prison when the only thing you can dream of is being out. Yeah. They are literally using a traumatized little girl being locked in a cell for years and slowly driven insane until she becomes a remorseless killer as a metaphor for gay people being in the closet because the outside world is so horribly intolerant and won't accept them. Holy shit. I'm not sure if this is more offensive to trauma survivors or to the LGBT community, but I think we can all probably agree it's terrible. What century do the writers think this is? Gay people are more universally accepted now than they've been at any other time in history. Does some prejudice still exist out there? Sure. But being gay is not out of the ordinary anymore. It's been normalized for quite a while now, but the writers seem to want us to believe that gay people are being hunted every day by angry mobs with torches and pitchforks or something. And for the record, the only time we've ever seen anti-gay prejudice negatively impact Sophie's life in any significant way was with the Don't Ask, Don't Tell storyline, which already felt like a bunch of bullshit because Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed years before that storyline could have realistically happened, which means that the writers are literally bringing prejudice back just so they have something to virtue signal about. This is disgusting. If you ask me, the writers owe every single gay person who watches this show an apology. Why can't you just write gay characters like normal characters? People who are just like everybody else, except who they want to bang is a little different. Because as I understand it, that's what most gay people are. Just write them as regular people, for crying out loud. Why do you have to crank up the persecution so you can invent all new ways to victimize them or bring back ways they were treated unfairly in the past that aren't even a thing anymore and haven't been a thing for a long time just because it fits your ill-conceived bullshit narrative? Why do they have to be sock puppets for identity politics that are blown so out of proportion that they dwarf the Anti-Monitor even after he grew to giant size? What a load of garbage. I feel bad for any LGBT people who tuned into this crapfest hoping to see a show about a superhero who happened to be gay, and instead found themselves being used and pandered to like this by a bunch of no-talent hacks who probably only have a job in television in the first place because they checked all the same political boxes as the producers. This sucks. So Kate talks to Luke on the phone. They both agree that the police would rather let those 2 kids die than ask for help from a lesbian crime fighter, because remember, straight people are the devil. Kate mentions that she feels guilty about not being able to save Beth like her counterpart from the new Beth's universe did, but Luke reminds her that Mouse is about to kill 2 helpless kids, so Kate should cut the crap and focus on that. So Kate jumps on her motorcycle, speeds down the street, weaves around a bunch of cars, drives into an intersection, and gets hit by a truck. Turns out Mouse and his thugs were waiting for her. So Mouse knocks Kate out, because several tons of metal ramming into her at 50 miles an hour wasn't enough to do that, and takes her hostage. Kate wakes up in a car with her hands tied to the wheel, and they had to restrain her or she would have easily escaped. Because you see, even though she was just hit by a truck, Kate is miraculously, completely unharmed. Not a mark on her, not a hair out of place. You'd think that truck that hit her was made of hugs and rainbows for all the damage it did. Remember the first time Kate got hit by a truck a few episodes ago? After that, she only needed an ice pack and was otherwise totally fine. And the excuse for this was that the batsuit is impact resistant. This time, though, Kate was not wearing the batsuit and was hit even harder by a much bigger truck And she's even less injured than she was the first time. So what's the excuse here? What the f*** is going on? How is Kate even alive right now? No one survives this! Human beings don't just shrug off stuff like this without getting f***ing injured! And if Kate is so goddamn indestructible that she didn't even break a nail after Mouse tried to turn her into a human pancake with a f***ing U-Haul, then why should we get emotionally invested in anything she does? Why should we ever be afraid for her? Why should we ever feel anxious or worry that she might not save the day? Where is the tension and the drama and the suspense of her being a crime fighter supposed to come from? Imagine how much more powerful and compelling this scene would be if Kate had a concussion or broken bones or something. Some kind of injury that prevented her from being able to overcome these goons like she always does, and she had to find a way to win despite not being able to fight. The whole point of having a hero without superpowers is so you can tell stories about them struggling when stuff like this happens to them. But if there's no struggle, then there's no fucking point! So Mouse calls Sophie and tells her that since the police don't give enough of a shit about these two boys to overcome their horrific prejudice against gay people long enough to shine the bat signal, he's taken Kate hostage and will kill her and the boys unless Sophie releases Alice. Kate talks to Sophie and says that she's not hurt at all, no worse than in survival training, so there's no need to worry, but tells her to let Alice go. And then she says it again. And turns out that was a code from survival training. Saying something twice means do the opposite. So Kate is actually telling Sophie to not release Alice. And I'd like to point out that Kate is risking the lives of these boys by telling Sophie what to do in this situation, but the episode has already made it abundantly clear that these boys don't mean shit and no one, including their parents, gives a rat's ass whether they live or die, so I guess that doesn't matter. Kate and Sophie having this secret code triggers another flashback of Beth and Mouse having a secret code of their own for when Mouse's dad is not around and it's safe to play with the kitten. But then the dad comes in anyway, finds the cat, and kills it. Which present-day Alice references when asking how Sophie will feel when she loses the thing that she loves so dearly. And I'm sorry, Alice, but if we're seriously comparing Kate to a cute little kitty, I don't think Kate is going to come out of that looking nearly as good as you think she will. By the way, at no point did Sophie ever bother trying to trace that call. Yeah, Sophie is not very good at this. So Beth shows up looking for Kate and she runs into Luke and he fills her in on what's going on. And she asks if the police actually exist on this Earth, which she thinks is a dumb question. But considering what an absolute non-entity the police have been for the last 11 episodes, I actually think it's an excellent question, but it's one she should be asking the writers, not Luke. Luke tries to track the GPS on Kate's phone, but the signal is weak, so he needs to boost it. But since they can't wait around for Sophie to become competent enough to think of tracing a goddamn phone call, and the evil, homophobic police would probably prefer to let those two boys die as long as openly gay Kate dies with them, Beth volunteers to pose as Alice to try to fool Mouse into letting Kate go. And also the two boys, I guess, but they don't really give a shit about them. And yeah, I'm serious about Sophie. They really can't count on her for anything. Instead of just telling her people, I need you to trace the last call made to this phone, she's still trying to get through to Alice. She thinks Beth is still in there somewhere. But Alice informs her that Beth never left that basement. Another flashback shows Mouse's batshit cartoon character of a father being pissed off at Beth because she made a sweater out of a blanket. Beth gets upset enough to say that her dad is going to kill him, but then he whips out a newspaper with the announcement that her dad is marrying Catherine, a marriage that comes complete with a brand new daughter to replace Beth, which naturally means that he had forgotten all about her. This finally breaks Beth, and she admits that she made the sweater. But that's a good thing, because it means that she has the delicate craftsmanship necessary to perfect the ass mask technology. I would think that you'd need some kind of medical training for that, but apparently not. Turns out Beth is just the bestest ever when it comes to carving strips of ass into the shape of a face. So she makes the mask work, doing what skin grafts and plastic surgery couldn't for some reason, and finally Mouse looks like a regular boy who the outside world will not consider a monster. You really can't make this shit up. So Mary's helping Beth get her Alice on, doing her makeup and fitting her with a wig that perfectly matches Alice's hair, a wig which apparently they just had lying around waiting to be used in case a situation like this ever came up. How fucking convenient. and giving her a crash course on how to act like a psychopath. This is hard for Mary because of who Beth looks like, but not so hard that she can't emotionally validate Beth for being nothing like that bitch. And I would strongly caution the writers against using lines like this. Alice is literally the only silver lining around the dark cloud of never-ending misery that is Batwoman. So maybe they should treat her with a little bit more respect than that. But who are we kidding? Asking these writers to have genuine respect for anyone or anything is probably asking for way too much. Cut to the car, where Kate is trying to get her hands free while the boys wait helplessly in the back seat for Batwoman to save them. One thinks his dad will never shine the bat signal because the commissioner hates lesbians even more than he hates his son, apparently. But the other boy reminds him that it's 2020, and no one cares about who's gay or straight anymore. And I don't know what the hell that line is doing in there, because 1, that's all these writers seem to care about, and 2, the plot of this episode is literally that the police are refusing to shine the bat signal because they hate lesbians, even though by not doing so they're supposedly sentencing these 2 boys to death. That really is how they're framing this situation. So the kid saying this, I don't know, man, it would make sense in a well-written show, but that's not the show he's in. So that line just feels hilariously out of place. And while we're on the subject, why is everybody under the impression that Batwoman has to wait for the bat signal before she can do anything about this? The story's been all over the news. Batwoman would surely be aware of it by now. But everybody is acting like the police refusing to shine the bat signal somehow means that Batwoman's hands are tied and she's forbidden from doing anything. Except the police have not shined the bat signal to summon Batwoman even once in 11 episodes, and that never stopped her from taking action before. So why the hell does anybody think it applies now? This whole thing is fucking stupid! So Mouse has run out of patience and he starts dousing the car with gasoline, but then Beth shows up looking all Alice-like, and this fools him for a minute, but he doesn't like it when Beth says that they should let the hostages go, and he gets really suspicious really quickly when she doesn't remember their secret code, and so he whips her wig off. As if the only logical explanation for Alice acting this way was that she was really an imposter who just happened to be Alice's identical doppelganger. I'm not sure how he arrived at that explanation exactly, but he got there somehow. So Mouse throws Beth in the trunk of the car, but Kate finally frees herself, goes right after Mouse's thugs, and starts kicking names and taking ass in such badass fashion that it's almost as if she wasn't hit by a truck a few minutes ago at all. Remember back in Arrow Season 1 when Oliver got shot in the chest, and in his desperation to get medical help, he had to reveal his secret identity to Felicity, and then she had to race him to the Arrow Cave so he could get an emergency transfusion before he lost too much blood and died? And then he went into cardiac arrest, and they had to shock him to get his heart beating again? Storytelling really isn't what it used to be, is it? So during the fight, Kate shoves Mouse, and he gets impaled through the chest by a rusty rebar. Not that this means anything, since the motherfucker doesn't even react to this. He doesn't scream out in pain, doesn't wince, doesn't say ouch. Instead, without missing a beat, he lights the car on fire. Cut back to Sophie, still being the most useless person in this episode by a country mile. She's insisting that Alice can still be the person she once was, and this triggers one more flashback where Alice is washing ass blood off her hands. Mouse thanks her for doing what modern medical science couldn't in making him look normal, and he gives her some of his dad's fishing line, which they can use to fix the copy of Alice in Wonderland he gave her because it got damaged at some point, I guess. Beth sees an excerpt on the book cover, "No use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then." And that's when she makes the decision to start acting like Alice. Yeah, the transformation is not subtle at all. It's pretty laughable, actually. I'll try to contain my amazement. And speaking of laughable things, they're not done with the metaphors just yet. Alice explains that she escaped her prison by becoming someone else, by creating a different reality. And isn't that exactly what Sophie did? After all, Sophie was lying to everyone for years about who she is by retreating into the arms of that man, because bisexuality is just science fiction, right? Anyway, this gets under Sophie's skin. She gets pissed off, and she tells her people to take Alice to Arkham, which, as far as she knows, is condemning Kate and those two boys to certain death. Personally, though, I'm still waiting for an explanation for why Alice is not being sent to prison for being a murderer, among many other things. Of course, the second they're outside, Alice turns the tables on these two supposedly highly trained security officers, whips out Mouse's fishing line, and uses it to kill them in seconds. Because they're men and therefore not allowed to win fights. And also because, despite the incredibly extensive tests that Sophie ran on that book to determine if it was safe to give back to Alice, she somehow missed the fucking garrote wire that was tying the pages together. Jesus Christ, the Crows need Jacob back and they need him back yesterday. Because if the last 2 episodes are any indication, Sophie really, really sucks at this job. Then when Sophie runs out there, Alice gets the jump on her too, and says that she's free of her cage, but Sophie will always be trapped in hers because it's one of her own making, and that is a hell all the more unbearable. Wow. They are literally comparing a gay person not being out and proud to being trapped in hell. Never mind the fact that bisexuality is a thing, and many bisexual people can and do go for partners of the opposite sex and lead happy lives by doing so. But no, turns out those people had it horribly wrong. And according to the Batwoman writers, by choosing partners of the opposite sex, they were sentencing themselves to eternal damnation. Such is the price for an LGBT person who is not being true to themselves. How are all you gay Batwoman viewers feeling right now? Do you feel respected? Do you feel like these writers have your best interests at heart? Do you feel like you're getting the mature, nuanced, sophisticated representation that you deserve? How do you feel knowing that this is what the writers think of you? That they see you as perpetual victims who only exist so they can save you. Because I gotta be honest here, if I was in your shoes watching this, realizing that this is what the Batwoman writers think of me, that they only care about painting me with a victim narrative because of how many woke points it scores them, I would never watch this show again. There is much better representation for you out there. You shouldn't have to and don't have to settle for this insipid, agenda-driven trash. You deserve better than Batwoman. You are worth so much more than this. I hope you all realize that. So Alice escapes. Meanwhile, Kate is trying to get Beth out of the trunk before the car blows up. She can't get it open, and only then does she open the rear doors to get the boys out, but it's only to get them out of the way so she can go through the back seats and get Beth out that way. There's some metal stuff that she can't pry her way through, and just for a second I fool myself into thinking that the writers might actually have the balls to do this, but they don't. Kate just grabs a crowbar, makes a hole, and saves Beth, making up for how she didn't save Beth as a kid. Yeah, God forbid Kate have some tragic backstory that motivates her to fight crime, because Batman stories have nothing to do with stuff like that, right? So later on, Vesper Fairchild spells out for everybody that Batwoman is off the table and her hands are tied as long as the police refuse to shine the bat signal. So I guess we're just forgetting about how Batwoman had no trouble fighting crime without the fucking bat signal for the last 11 episodes. Jesus Christ, please tell me it's almost over. Back at Crow's headquarters, they mentioned that Mouse is in surgery, so Kate did actually capture him this time. I'm guessing that development won't last very long, and Sophie wishes Kate a happy birthday, even though it's been her birthday for 2 episodes now, and asking us to believe that this has all been less than 24 hours is stretching it quite a lot. Then we see on the news that the citizens of Gotham are staging a protest to implore those homophobic bastards who call themselves police to turn on the bat signal, because without Batwoman, Gotham City is doomed. Doomed! And so moved by this are the police that they have no choice but to accept that Batwoman is indeed the bestest ever. They light up the bat signal. Batwoman appears to soak up everybody's adoration because there's a whole crowd of people worshipping at the altar of Batwoman here, and God knows she can't miss that. If I were these people, I'd be pissed off that Batwoman apparently stood by and did nothing to save 3 kidnapping victims from dying in a fire, forcing them to save themselves, all because the police wouldn't shine a fucking light in the sky, but that's just me. I mean, for fuck's sake, do these clowns not realize how petty and spiteful that makes Batwoman look? Of course they don't. Sophie visits Jacob and tells him that Alice escaped, but he's happy about this, because now that Alice is a fugitive, they can put a bullet in her, and no one will bat an eye. That is not even remotely how the law works, but who the hell are we kidding? When Beth asked Luke if the police even existed in this world, he might as well have answered no, because the law means absolutely fucking nothing on Batwoman, and they prove that every single week. Cut to Kate's gay bar, where Beth, Mary, and Luke are throwing her a surprise birthday party. Good God, that horse has been dead for ages, but they just will not stop wailing on it! Mary tells Kate that she finally understands why Kate was so hell-bent on redeeming Alice, because Beth truly is the bestest ever. Then she theorizes how the multiverse collapsing could have led to Beth being here, and then dismisses the whole thing as a joke. Ha. Kate and Beth get a cake, and they blow out the candles, and Kate got her wish because here Beth is. And then Beth has some sort of attack or migraine or something, and collapses in horrible pain. And somewhere on the streets of Gotham, Alice is doing the same thing, indicating that 2 Beths being in the same world is not something that should be a thing after all. And that is a shame, because I would take 2 versions of Beth over 1 version of Kate any damn day of the week. That was episode 11, and God help me, this show is on a one-way train to Shitville, and it's not stopping for anything. Something seemed to happen over the winter break where the writers decided that they weren't being nearly woke enough and they needed to double down on all the worst elements of this show. Every woke aspect is under a magnifying glass now. Every woman is indestructible and the bestest ever. Every man is either an asshole, a soy boy, or completely useless. Every cop is a bigoted piece of shit. Every gay person is unfairly hated, persecuted, and oppressed to the point that the Salem witch trials look tame by comparison. All the closeted gay people are going to hell for not being true to themselves, despite all this horrible persecution that openly gay people apparently suffer from, and all of them are looking to the almighty Batwoman as some shining beacon of hope and inspiration, and it is all absolutely sickening. This is not how a character in the Bat family should be operating. She shouldn't be trying to be a public figure on magazine covers and shit. She shouldn't even care about all that stuff. She should be a crime fighter who lurks in the shadows and strikes fear into the hearts of criminals. It's as if they're trying to turn Batwoman into Supergirl, but that doesn't make sense for Kate because they're not the same character and they never will be. And outside of the asinine character work, nothing else about this episode made sense either. The stuff with the bat signal was idiotic. Why does anyone think that the bat signal not being turned on would stop Batwoman from fighting crime when that was never a factor before? Why are the commissioner and the mayor sentencing their own children to death just because they don't want the kids to be saved by a lesbian? There's no reason for anyone to behave like this except that the writers need them to so the out and proud lesbian superhero can look that much more oppressed so she's that much more awesome when she triumphs over it. And the wokeness. My God, the wokeness. I think they've finally irreversibly screwed themselves in that department because this was the episode where the writers were trying so goddamn hard to be outraged about the persecution of gay people that the needle in the woke meter broke off and dropped down into negative digits, meaning that the real outrage was going to come from the LGBT people watching this travesty. How must gay people feel knowing that this is what the writers think of them? They're not even people to these writers. They're nothing but political tools. And when said politics are so cringy, so poorly written, and so ill-conceived in every sense of the word, all you've accomplished is making something that is incredibly offensive to the very people you claim to be championing. This was easily the most flat-out offensive episode of Batwoman yet. And that is not a claim I make lightly, but they pulled it off. And I'm absolutely disgusted that something this awful actually made it to TV. Even when they had a shot at a silver lining, they completely dropped the ball. Beth being back meant that Kate actually had a reason to reflect on something that she sees as a genuine regret for a change. Something that is incredibly rare for a character normally portrayed as completely fucking infallible. But even then, it's only done so Kate can immediately correct her mistake so she's not tortured by it anymore. Because the last thing we'd want to do is tell an actual story with this. And they even chickened out with Beth, having Kate save her from the car like it's no big deal, when for storytelling purposes, for dramatic purposes, the infinitely more interesting and compelling way to go that could have led to some really juicy material to mine for future stories would have been to kill her. Think about it. Here, Kate has a second chance to save Beth. She doesn't succumb to fear this time. She does everything humanly possible to save her, but she still fails. So she's tortured by it all over again. It would prove that Kate is fallible and make her more human, a more relatable person, a more sympathetic person. Instead, she just saves Beth, proves that she's the bestest ever yet again, and that's it. How is that interesting? It's not. It sucks. And now it looks like they're gonna kill Beth next week because two Beths can't exist in the same universe or whatever. But that's stupid because that's just a way to get rid of Beth in a way that Kate won't blame herself for. So Beth will be gone, but it won't be anyone's fault. Or, if anything, it'll probably be Alice's fault. Because the last thing we want to do is challenge our audience or make our heroine an actual sympathetic and complex human being. Kiss my ass. Batwoman is an atrocity, and it's only getting worse. But thankfully, the ratings are reflecting that. So you know what, writers? You know what? Keep going down that road. Keep getting woke as hell. Keep flushing your viewership down the toilet. And next year, when you get canceled after your second season that the CW probably has buyer's remorse about ordering right now, you can look at yourselves in the mirror and ask yourselves why you're suddenly unemployed. And then maybe, just maybe, you might have a moment of clarity about all this. Until then, f*** you, and f*** this show. To all my LGBT viewers, I'm so sorry if you watched this episode. This was offensive garbage, and the writers were acting like they were doing you the biggest favor in the world. And I feel like I should apologize to you, because the writers obviously won't. If you enjoyed this review, check out the playlists on the channel and watch the other ones. Ding that bell icon and follow me on Twitter using the link in the description so you'll always know when new videos get uploaded. F the algorithm by commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, making sure you're still subscribed because people are being randomly unsubscribed every day, and I'll be back with more very soon. Until then, I'm Thorias. Over. Out.